Hello, I'm Robert, volunteer fact checker, and helping you if you're scared of many things. And I'm just, as you will know, if you follow me in the forum, then I'm just been through 24 hours, very intense, very continuous, working on my Ofcom complaint to submit to Ofcom. And I'm getting some sleep with occasional gaps in between, catch up on, I'm probably nearly 24 hours without any sleep. But as you can see, I'm actually in bed at the moment. And I thought I'd just do a video to upload on my experience of working with a chatbot. And a situation much closer to the way most people use chatbots and the way that I use it normally, which is very targeted. Find this thing on the internet, fact check this thing that I'm saying, look for information on such and such, and that's all I use it. And when that's done, I close it. But this time I was chatting with the same chatbot continuously for most of that 24 hours as I worked on my submission. It was extraordinarily useful, but I would never let it anywhere near drafting an Ofcom submission itself. And so I think I've got maybe some quite useful reflections on the limitations of chatbots. I'd already talked about how they're just text extruders and pattern extruders, and that's all they're doing. And about how that leads to them not being able to, there's nothing there like what we do. But this became really, really striking in very obvious ways when working on this Ofcom submission. Now, I can't actually share any actual details until the whole thing is over. So I mustn't share anything about the actual BBC complaint process that I went through and why I appealed to it. But I can just share one very simple example though, but it doesn't really reveal anything except that I made a mistake. So this was a drafting slip, a drafting error. And I just want to say something on the lines that I made this drafting error in one of my responses to the BBC, very minor drafting error, but I needed to say corrected, I was quoting it, and I needed to add a correction saying what I should have said was ... So I need a bit of explanation as to why I corrected my own submission. I said it was because of time pressure. Well, the chatbot insisted, with various variations on it, that instead of saying because of time pressure, I should say because of severe time pressure, or other things like that. And if you think about it, you're talking to someone, a human being, who is just listening, reading this, and all they need to know is why you've got this, what I should have said in the text. And if before that, say because of time pressure, very ordinary reason, totally understandable. If I say because of severe time pressure, that extra word is completely unnecessary and it's counterproductive. Now that thing alone would not have sunk my chances. But the person the official reading my complaint would look at that and say, why does he say severe? Was there something else going on? That's how human beings respond to something like that. When someone overemphasizes something like that and says severe when there's no need to say so. Was there a different reason was there some actual reason why they made this mistake, and it wasn't actually because of time pressure. So it's the sort of thing that a naive person, might very easily make. So it's doing this partly because probably it's trained on loads and loads of people who actually make this kind of rather minor slip when they're in a situation like me. But I explained to the chatbot, look, this isn't a very sensible thing to say, and it immediately understood, or seemed to understand. They don't actually understand at all. There's no understanding there whatsoever. So that's a very simple, minor thing that it did. It did much more major mistakes than that, which would have completely sunk my submission if I'd it just as if the whole thing was like that, full of high impact words, over exaggerating, and very major mistakes all the way through, and I'd have had no chance. So it was very good at spotting my mistakes, and very good at telling me how to structure the complaint and the things to look out for. Excellent on that. But it was utterly garbage at doing it itself. And this is why chatbots are never going to replace humans, at least what we have at present. It can't replace humans with sensitive things where you need to have ideas of context and how to respond and so on. So I don't want to go into a little bit more detail about that. So there's quite a lot of elements to this that I hadn't really realised about chatbots before. So first of all, what I did know, and I've explained to you many times, chatbots don't have any semantics, that is the meaning of things. They don't have any understanding of syntax. They have no understanding of anything, but particularly of these are particularly striking. That the syntactical structure of a sentence and the way it functions grammatically. They produce sentences that to us have meaning, that to us are very fluent, and they have perfect syntax and perfect grammar. But a chatbot doesn't have intrinsic understanding of any of that. And by semantics, so a calculator has a semantics. So you could say that a calculator metaphorically understands what a number is. Because there's nothing there that knows or understands anything, but it does have a semantics. It has the meaning of a number built in, because the digits that show on the screen function exactly like the numbers do that we work with. It's designed around the meaning of a number. And all the additions are perfect, all the multiplications are perfect. Everything works exactly like a number should. So in that sense, a calculator has a semantics. What it shows on the screen is what we understand as a number. But none of the words that a chatbot uses to you, has any semantics in that sense. So when you talk to me about Ofcom, it's not tied to any meaning attached to the word Ofcom. When it talks about chatbots, when it talks about the past, future, when it talks about, for instance, when I said I was under time pressure, the word time pressure has no meaning for the chatbot. The word severe has no meaning. None of this means anything. There's no semantics attached to it in the way that the calculator has a semantics attached to the number. And this is very clear sometimes. Then the other thing it doesn't have, it has no memory. So even when it does long coherent passages where one thing goes to another, it is not based on a sequence of memories. It's just all extruded in one go. And it has no sense of cause and effect, or past and future. So, or time. So this was very striking when I was talking to it. I would mention things that happened after the article I was complaining about, and it would try to bring these things, which were relevant in various ways, it would try to bring these things into my complaint as if the author of the article knew them, because it's got no idea of time. So if you ask it, find everything before December 2025, which is the date of the article, then it can go and it'll filter its results so they're before December 2025. Because they've worked with it over many years, a lot of work, and they've refined it and they've got it to be able to respond to things like that correctly. But it has no intrinsic understanding of time. So it will not even think, because it doesn't think at all. It will not occur to it that because you're looking at an article for December 25, that the things that the author knows about have to precede December 25. You have to tell it that. And then it will go and look for things like that. It has no sense whatsoever of cause and effect. So when it advised me to talk about severe time pressure, it did not look at what would the effect of this sentence be on the regulator who reads it. It's got no sense of context. So it couldn't, so there's no it there at all, but I'm talking about how naively it seems to you when you're talking to it. It seems like you're talking to something, to an entity of some sort. So in that sense of an entity, then this entity, which actually doesn't exist, is just automated pattern extruder, but there's no sense of context. So it can't model. So it can't model the situation that this, what I'm presenting, is an Ofcom complaint. How would an official working for a regulator interpret that complaint? And what sort of things that I say in this complaint could maybe lead to bad reactions in that official? It just can't do that sort of thing. It can't model how an official would respond, because it's got no idea of time, no idea of cause and effect, and no idea of context either. It'll produce things that seem to fit the context because it's drawing on all sorts of words in the internet that people have said that fit the context they were talking about, but only in a very broad brush way. There's no actual modelling going on. And there's so no sense of, no semantics. It's got no idea of the syntactical structure of a sentence. It's got no idea of grammar. So even though it said to me, because you've got two verbs next to each other, in one after another, you need to remove one of them. But it doesn't know what a verb is. It's just producing that because somehow, in this magical way that we're beginning to understand, it produces things that I understand as being about verbs. There's nothing on its side about verbs. So it doesn't have an intrinsic, true understanding of what a verb is. And this is very striking. Google Translate, if you try to build in semantics into it, if you try to get it to extract elements of a sentence and say, look, this is the noun, this is the adjective, this is the verb, then it immediately loses its ability to translate. It will only very, very rudimentary ability to translate into different languages. You just can't do it. Yet it automatically, so almost like a miracle, but it's to do with the effect of very large amounts of text and statistics. That's really the reason. It's able to translate sentences with perfect grammar, perfect syntax in English into any other language. But if you try to get it to break down into components and then do it, it can't do it. Another thing is that, and that is exactly the same for the chatbots. They have no, and this is important if you are talking very detailed about something that you're submitting, that you're writing as a submission to Ofcom, and the thing you're talking to has no idea of really how grammar works, or how syntax works. And it's got no idea of logical reasoning, really. So it doesn't, when you give it a big chunk of text to look at, it doesn't read it sequentially from the start to the end. And it can criticize your reasoning, but when it produces a chunk of text, it's not basing it on reasoning. And so it can say quite absurd things sometimes, because it's not actually reasoning. So it has no memory. So it does not work like humans do, that you remember the first sentence, and then in a bit of reasoning, you then have got the logical deduction to the next bit of the reasoning, logical deduction to the next, and the distinct things in your memory that are joined together by logical reasoning. This is just a whole pattern of words that it's producing, and it's not actually reasoning at all. Even though it can say things that to us look like reasoning, and even though it can criticize my reasoning and find flaws in it, but it's not actually doing it. And that's another thing, that when they try and build reasoning into it, they can't do it. It just immediately stops working. So what they do is they add an extra layer of reasoning after to try and filter the output. And it can't do arithmetic. I already talked about that but that didn't actually come up during this conversation. But it doesn't intrinsically understand what numbers are, but it uses external tools to do that. There was an example in my reasoning. It counted the number of characters I had in my web form, and it got that wrong, and said that one of my web form submissions was too long, and I just copied and pasted it from the field. It was 1,500 characters, and it came up with the wrong number for it. Said you've got to shorten this. That's just probably some mistake in the external tool that it sent that to, and how it sent it to the external tool it was using or something, because it doesn't have intrinsic ability to count letters. So, yes, and there was a very funny one. It kept telling me that I'd spent, and this is not revealing anything about my complaint, that I'd spelled disappear with one S. And it was actually, I was using two S's. And I showed it an actual image, a photograph, a screenshot of the text that it was responding to, and it agreed there were two S's in it. But it kept telling me I'd only got one S. So, and every time I used the word disappear, it said there was one S in it. And I said, and eventually it said, okay, I'll stop keep telling you that you've misspelled the word disappear. And so I did a bug report and said there's some bug in how the tokenizer is working for Gemini, that for some reason it is not tokenizing the word disappear correctly. So that is how it takes my text and turns it into tokens, makes a whole bunch of tokens, and it then puts it into a pattern in multi-dimensional space with thousands of dimensions, and then it does all sorts of stuff inside, and then it comes up with a pattern that it produces to me. And at some point it was just not turning the word disappear into tokens properly. There's nothing like the way that humans think. Nothing the way that humans work. So all in all, chatbots don't work like humans, not even remotely. It's very, very clear to me. Because of my background of logic and philosophy and the logical foundations of mathematics, logical foundations of how mathematicians reason. And so I've got a very sharp, very nitty, that's a word from the chatbot, very clear, very precise is the word that I would normally use. You've got to be a little bit concerned. The chatbots kept telling me also, kept flattering me. And that was also very obvious. Kept saying, that's a very sharp, astute observation. When I was saying something just dead obvious. That it's always flattering me and saying, what an amazing thing this is. You're sure to succeed and so on. So you've got to discount that sort of thing too. So just step back a bit and say, they always flatter you no matter what you write. Almost no matter what you write. And so that's another thing that was very obvious. I think I did produce a really excellent submission as a result of all this. But it's because of the reasoning that it gave as to why it agreed that it was a very excellent submission, that I do think it was a very good submission. But you shouldn't, you also shouldn't believe the chatbots flattery. And I'm just thinking about this, suppose someone's just chatting away to a chatbot, and then maybe you're talking about a personal problem, and you're wondering precisely how to bring this up with someone. And chatbot might well suggest that you use particular words, or a particular sentence. Don't pay any attention to it. If it says that, use your own words. Please don't use chatbot manufactured words for some tricky personal situation you're in. Because the chatbot has no idea of any of these things, past, future, time, context, human emotions. And then when I talk about the reason it got these things wrong, it kept saying, this is because chatbot doesn't understand humans and hasn't got the lived experience of a human and human emotions. So I think from that probably very often in these long chats like this, people do say things, use the chatbot's advice, and then they come back and say, look, this didn't work. It says, well, look, we don't have, a chatbot doesn't have lived experience of human emotions, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is that there's no semantics, there's no grammar, there's no context, there's no idea of past or present or future, there's no idea of cause and effect, there's no idea of context. It's got none of the things it needs, the tools it needs, to be able to parse a complex situation and respond appropriately. And so this is why I'm very convinced that at least our present generation of chatbots, they're going to be a very useful tool. They're already used in a major way by mathematicians and in a very major way by people who write code, who do coding, and to prevent hacking and to look for security vulnerabilities. They're extremely useful for my voluntary fact-checking when you know how to use them. And there are many ways they can be used, but they're never going to replace humans, not what we've got now. Because, and it's the same thing with art and creativity. They're not going to replace artists, because you don't understand, it doesn't have any idea of the context of the artwork. It doesn't have any idea of a purpose. It's no idea of cause and effect. It's got no idea of adding any meaning to the artwork. So it can only produce things that are kind of things like lots of other people produce. So I think, so this is just a short video. Just basic impression I get from using the Gemini continuously for 24 hours, which I've never used a chatbot in this way before, just actually sort of talking in the way that most people do, so just chat, never just chat to it. And this was the closest that I've ever got to that experience. And I can see, it's incredibly useful. There's lots of things it can do that are good. But I also saw that it's never going to replace humans. Not what we've got. It's just so I think it's going to be a very important tool for our society. They're not going to go away. They're going to be part of our civilization from now on. But certainly at present, we haven't got anything that's anything close to what humans do, and they can't substitute. So that's so it's both. This video is both advice about if you're using chatbots to recognize why they make such dumb mistakes and not. Please don't use a chatbot to give you words, to tell you words or sentences to use for some complex personal situation you're in. And just recognize chatbot is not going to, there's no understanding context, and recognize its limitations. And then they can be very useful. And so it's both kind of alert to the limitations of a chatbot, and also to help people worry that chatbots might replace humans. And certainly what we've got at the present, they're nowhere near doing that. They're not even making the first steps of trying to fix these problems. Or they're trying to fix these problems, not making the first steps of actually getting them there. They are making huge steps forward in trying to reduce the number of really blatant errors that they make much fewer of those. But then they still make them, but then you use them more, and then the errors are much more significant. So the very, very serious errors they can still make. And so anyway, so hopefully that helps. You can, I think, help you be, especially people who are scared that chatbots might take over from humans or anything like that. No way whatsoever. And to just some caution about how you use chatbots. And and so the basic thing is, you can go to chatbot and ask it. It can comment on things you're doing. It can tell you, sometimes give you quite good advice, but look at the advice very carefully. But never, but it can't actually do the things that it advises you. Just like it can't do arithmetic natively, it can teach you it could teach you how to do addition, multiplication, and so on. Can't really do it itself. It just has to farm that out to. It's almost like it's got a pocket calculator it uses whenever you come to it. It doesn't really understand numbers. Doesn't really understand anything. So there's nothing there. It's just an automatic pattern text extruder, but can be incredibly useful. So yeah, that's it. I'm not quite sure how to end this, but I think that will do.